Today I'll be teaching about prezygotic isolation mechanism. A prezygotic isolation mechanism is any sort of process or anything that prevents a sperm and an egg from forming a zygote. Many examples of a prezygotic isolation mechanisms are listed here, and the first one I'll be discussing is a habitat isolation mechanism.
Habitat isolation, otherwise known as ecological isolation, prevents two species from interacting because of their ecological preferences. Habitat isolation refers to the point where two species may be in the same general area but not in the same habitat where they are likely to meet.
There you just saw two different monkey species in two different habitats. That is an example of habitat isolation. This is because two different species in two separate habitats, there's no way a sperm or an egg can meet if they're completely separated. After habitat isolation, we'll be moving next to temporal isolation.
This image shows two cricket species that are only seen during certain seasonal times of the year.
I'm a polar bear. I'm a polar bear.
There you just saw two polar bear species showing off temporal isolation. One was during the rainy season and another was during the dry season. Next, we'll be moving on to behavioral isolation.
Behavioral isolation is an important evolutionary mechanism that helps members of the same species identify each other as proper mates.
Build a new world for us two.
There you just saw two Jamaican men demonstrating behavioral isolation. One was rapping and the other was dancing. The mates that would be attracted by dancing would not be attracted by the rapper, and so on. Next, we'll move on to mechanical isolation.
Although it is hard to tell, in this clip we are demonstrating that the apple and banana are incompatible genitalia.
There you just saw an example of mechanical isolation. There was two organisms with incompatible mating organs. Next, you will see an example of a gamete isolation.
Gametic isolation is a type of prezygotic barrier where the gametes, egg and sperm, come into contact but no fertilization takes place.
There you just saw an example of a gamete isolation. Those two different gametes were not able to form together in one zygote.
Bryce just finished discussing all of the prezygotic isolation mechanisms. Now I'll start talking about all of the postzygotic isolation mechanisms. First, I'll talk about hybrid inviability right after this short clip.
This image is an example of hybrid inviability. The offspring produced by the two different species will not be able to mature, therefore it will not be able to reproduce.
Hybrid inviability refers to the idea that after the zygote forms, it slowly dies after a few cell divisions. Next, we're going to move on to hybrid breakdown.
This image is an example of hybrid breakdown. If the new species is fertile, it will become less fertile as they go through generation to generation. This will eventually cause the species to go extinct.
After a few successive generations of hybrids, the offspring can no longer function properly. Finally, Well, I'll discuss about hybrid sterility after this clip.
A liger is a crossbreed between a lion and a tiger. Unfortunately, a liger cannot mate with another liger to make a baby liger because ligers are sterile hybrids between tigers and lions.
So, hybrid sterility is when two organisms from different species can create a functioning offspring but which cannot reproduce.
Speak, Mr. Me, Siamese, even Christ said Christ, he flows quite nicely. Hype beast highly likely to bite me and try to high-five me, but I just give him high threes, 'cause y'all don't